Alright, y'all. So today we are going to be looking at my 10 rental teams for November. So I feel like we've been working on these teams for quite some time, right? And I definitely appreciate you guys who've been, patient while we've been getting them ready. But we do officially have our 10 rental teams ready for Regulation H. And I feel like the adjustments we went through over time were definitely worth it. Like, we've got some really cool teams, and I'm excited to show them to you guys. So, that being said, thank you for being here again. If you do appreciate the content, uh, consider liking and subscribing. Stick around. We do appreciate you. And yeah, so first and foremost, we've got this Indeedee male team, which I built as my first version of Indeedee male Psyspam that I wanted to try for Reg H. So the main idea, right, is like we've got Murkrow Tailwind, so immediately we have a good lead with Indeedee Murkrow, where you can just click Tailwind, try to do big damage. And then you have those other threats in the back to be really scary, like Armoroth, Goldengo. This is actually a fast Ursaluna, so you have fast Ursaluna to take advantage of that Tailwind as well. And then the Rain Dance might look a little bit awkward on this team, but it's actually just because I want additional answers into Lilycole specifically. And while it might seem weird to run Rain Dance just for that, while I literally already have Tailwind, I already have this, I already have that, right? Especially the Armoroth, is really good into the Lilycole stuff. But for playing weather games, sometimes that manual Rain Dance is going to be really nice. And while it might be nice to run Sun, it seems like this team would probably like Sun a little bit more in some ways. The Rain Dance actually really helps things like Goldengo and beating things like opposing Sand, opposing Sun, opposing, Blizzard, whatever it's called, Snow. And so it works. It works pretty well, honestly. And then the Haze is there if you do need to just go for those Make It Rains over and over again. So, and obviously just for Dondozo. So we've got a lot of cool interplay with this team. I really like the way it feels. The Indeedee Armoroth, obviously good. And then Tyranitar's Bulk is just really hard to beat right now. And so is the pressure of Ursaluna and Goldengo. So everything, naturally worked out well. And we did decide to change Hyper Voice for Terra Blast because it's really nice to have a non-spread move sometimes when you're going up against things that should have Wide Guard, right? So you can set your terrain, you don't have to lock into Expanding Force, you can lock into Terra Blast, which you still have Stab for either way, either you Terra or you don't, still Stab, right? And so it works, it all works out well. And I don't know what else I want to say about the team without spending too much time talking about it. So going on to our next team, we've got the Spiritomb team that I built around the time for Halloween. So this team has a couple components that I think look a little bit awkward in ways, but work well. I think mostly just the Terra on Spiritomb, while it's good for a Moongus, in other instances doesn't really do much, right? Especially versus others like Pelipper's and things like that. But I like it, it's there. We're generally not really going to be Terraing Spiritomb most of the time anyways, but it does have to worry about things like Spirit Break, which we have actually occasionally still been seeing, but you also do have the King Gambit to disincentivize people going for things that can lower stats, because you could switch in King Gambit and do things like that. So I'll try to remember to talk about switch outs, right? But when I start to talk more in depth about the teams is when it starts to take a lot of time. So that's why I don't really do that, right? I kind of just, I'm like, here's the 10 teams. I hope you like them, right? But we have the Grassy Seed Sneasler with Protect. I can see why people would think, like, why aren't you running Fake Out, kind of? Like, fast Fake Out's really good, but we don't really need the double Fake Out that much. I'd actually rather be able to protect Sneasler and still have all the access to those different moves, so it's nice. And then, Sneasler's kind of like a way to offset the slow mode, right? Like, this team's actually a dual mode, and I think that's what it does really well. Like, you can set Tailwind, you can go fast with Sneasler, Rillaboom, make King Gambit go fast, even though it's not that fast. And so you have, like, a decent Tailwind mode, and then you also have a very solid Trick Room mode with Spiritomb, Rillaboom, Amoonguss, Pelipper, pretty much everything except for Sneasler, right? But even if you're going to set Trick Room, it doesn't mean you can't bring Sneasler. Like, we've seen a lot of teams where fast Pokemon help make the Trick Room easier to get off, and then, you know, you just kind of conserve it until after Trick Room's over. So, it all works. And personally, I've been sticking to Pelipper with Wide Guard. I know Pelipper with Protect is really good, but I can't let it go, man. Like, Ursaluna is a thing, Eruption's a thing, like, there aren't that many spread moves around, but there are, and it makes a difference. I used to think that Dragon Darts got blocked by Wide Guard, and I'm pretty sure it's supposed to, but, like, I've been attacked by Dragon Darts and then had it not blocked by Wide Guard. Maybe I only had one Pokemon on the field when that happened, but, like, I don't know. I'm just saying, like, so I've seen some weird interactions these days, like with Stomping Tantrum, Wide Guard, things like that. But either way, it's a fun team. You know, it's got the Hex Snarl, which we kind of forgot to talk about. I'll remember to talk more about the items on the next teams, so I just want to make sure that we're respecting the amount of time that this video is going to take, since there's 10 videos, 10 teams. So, going on to our next team, this is the final version of the Poison Touch Muk that I was trying. So, I actually think that Assault Vest Muk has a lot of potential in the current format. Like, it's able to take hits from things incredibly well, and then on top of that, it has access to a really nice move pool that can do some good things. So, the one thing that I decided to put on the team that I don't necessarily think is perfect is the Drain Punch, right? Originally, we had Snarl over Drain Punch, and I think that was nice because you could click, like, you could start like Muk Goldengo and click Protect Snarl, something Nasty Plot, or you can click like start Muk Braviary, click Snarl Protect, and then do Tailwind, right? So there's ways in which the Snarl was really good, and like in testing I might actually end up changing it, but like my intention was to not really need to change any of the teams at this point, right? But yeah, so after that, we have the Life Orb Braviary with the Fighting Tera for the extra stab on close combat. We have a Psychic Seed instead of Grassy Seed Sneasler with Coaching to benefit the Muk, because Assault Vest Muk with Coaching boosts is actually very good. And, you know, you also are boarding off the Intimidates with Defiant Braviary. So, really good chance to use Coaching Sneasler there. And then standard Goldengo, you know, it's fast, it has Metal Coat, it likes to click Steel Terra, Make It Rain. So big damage from our other Pokemon, right? Like, we have the Imprisoned Trick Room, Focus Sash Indeedee on this team, which is definitely really useful because Indeedee is very, very frail the way that you run the Indeedee male. So, like, it really just can't eat a hit reliably. So, lastly, we have the Choice Scarf Delphox, actually. So, this team is kind of geared towards, like, if I feel like I can't do certain things, I'm just gonna start, like, Delphox and try to blow things up with Scarf Expanding Force, Scarf Dazzling Gleam. But, like, in general, you're probably gonna want to try to go for Tailwind. If you don't feel like you can, you're gonna probably, you know, want to try to do scary things with Sneasler, Indeedee, Delphox, Indeedee, you know, Sneasler, Muk, things like that, right? But the one thing I think this team would maybe be a little bit better with is you could technically think about just doing like a follow me Indeedee with Indeedee female, and by having that redirection, you're helping out Braviary, you're helping out Delphox, you're helping out a lot of things on the team, right? So that's something that I'm going to think about if I do want to change the team, but all in all, I like the way that it looks. Yeah, there you go. Fourth, we have the Typhlosion team that I came up with because I wanted to try Typhlosion and Ninetales. I don't know why I thought Typhlosion and Ninetales together made a good core, but like it was more so that I wanted to try Typhlosion, and I was trying a few different versions. I didn't really like how it was going, and then I was working on a bulk team with Mousehold Annihilate, and then I was like, okay, well, what's good with things that want to stay on the field forever? Ninetales, right? Ninetales or Grimmsnarl, technically, but Weather Wars are really crucial right now, so having the access to the, snow is just good, right? So you go Mousehold Annihilate Ninetales, another Pokemon that really enjoys the bulk afforded by Aurora Veil, and Follow Me is Corviknight, right? So immediately we had those four together, and then added Typhlosion. I had Toxapex over Wims, but we were losing to Tailwind pretty significantly, so adding Wims is an additional way to activate Annihilate, give us Tailwind support, and then also have the Sunny Day support for Typhlosion. So it all comes together really well, and I actually think that dual weather teams are thriving pretty significantly right now. So if you do have the ability to create like a sun sand team, sun snow team, things like that, like where you have access to whatever you need in the situation, like even like dual terrain teams, can be really strong. So we'll see a little bit of that later. But yeah, I like Covert Cloak Wims. I think it's just really nice right now. It's even better with Encore, but we don't have Encore, and technically, in my opinion, Annihilate has felt the least useful on this team, but I think that's mostly in like a best of 3 standpoint. Like in a best of 1 standpoint, I use Annihilate quite a lot, but in best of 3, I think it feels like Annihilate could be replaced by maybe like Specs Kamo I was floating around the idea of. So it's things to think about. Other things to say about the team, we do have the Choice Scarf Typhlosion, however, nothing on this team has Life Orb. So if we really wanted to keep our options open, take off the Choice Scarf, do Life Orb Typhlosion. However, I actually think that, like, just because you have Tailwind doesn't mean Scarf isn't good, right? Like, your opponent can have Tailwind too, and in that case, like, having Scarf is very useful, right? So the Scarf on Typhlosion does help. It also helps in instances where you want to lead something like Mousehold Typhlosion. And so it just gives the team better versatility, which I really like. Fire Terra Annihilate, good for not getting burned. Technically not always the best Terra, but we face some instances where like it's really nice to not have Water Terra versus like Rillaboom and things like that. The Corviknight generally likes the Dragon Terra, but it's not always perfect. So, Mousehold, Ghost Terra, the bulk level in the format is just so reduced that like most things still just go down to Pop Bomb. You don't have to worry about it, like, and it's really nice. So, the Ninetales set, I have recognized that maybe replacing Moonblast with Icy Wind could be good, but besides that, I like it. We originally were trying Light Clay, but Focus Sash was pretty solid. So, we've just had some instances where it was actually pretty needed to have access to that extra turn. And just knowing that, like, you can eat a hit, it really makes a difference sometimes. And this team generally can do what it needs to within the time of the Veil that, like, you don't need the extended screens. So, going on to our next team, this is an adapted version of my Baltimore team. So originally I was trying Gastrodon over Whimsicott, then I replaced Gastrodon for Scarf Garchomp, and that was actually really strong. I just didn't think it was that good at the time, so I didn't commit to it, but like, it actually would have been a really good thing as we've seen the meta develop. You know, the double dragons are really strong, especially for a balanced team. Like, if you know that you don't have Tailwind, having access to those different things can be really strong, especially because we do already have Pollen Puff redirection, or I mean Rage Powder redirection for setting up our other Pokemon or enabling them, right? So, yeah, it could have been good, but ultimately we decided to switch to the Talonflame for the tournament, and the Talonflame was nice, but like, it just wasn't really doing what I needed it to, and so like, I actually think that the Encore Whims would have been really nice for threatening our opponent into like choosing very wisely what they're doing. And then, because we have Amoonguss, we can sacrifice Taunt kind of and run Energy Ball, and the Energy Ball is really nice versus things like Basculegion, you know, random things like with Water Terra. Just things that you can kind of redirect the pressure away from Whims with like Amoonguss or something else, and then click like Energy Ball, do big damage, and then make them have to worry about other things with like switching in Tyranitar, etc. Right? So it actually is a really strong team. I just I didn't have it figured out in time and practiced in time to do well at the tournament, so felt bad, but it's all good. The last thing to say about the team, I think, is just that like, Sylveon, while it is incredibly strong, can be replaced by Primarina to good success in a lot of instances. I don't really think Primarina is that great, so like, I felt like sticking with Sylveon was good, but like, we did see some games where probably like Primarina would have been a little bit better into like Goldango teams, basically. So, like Goldango, even into sometimes into like the into the King Gambit Clefable teams, you know. So it's a small change. Like, and I really do like the Fire Terra, Life Orb, Terra Blast, but you know, it's something to think about. Lastly, just the Choice Band Dragonite. People really have moved away from Choice Band Dragonite, and that's something that I do recognize, but like, this was doing pretty darn good for me at the time. It just came down to like playing it well, and sometimes my opponents were able to take advantage of it with like Ghost Terror and stuff. So, fun team, but yeah. This is our 6th team, I think, right? So 6th team, we've got the Hatterene with the Charizard stuff. So this is actually my most recent team that I built. After Gdansk Regional, I just kind of felt like, okay, like, I've been sitting here thinking about Charizard, watching everyone build all these cool Charizard teams. Like, I want to build Charizard. Like, you know what I mean? So I built my own version of Charizard. Kind of kept the Ursaluna Charizard Torkoal core, but instead of Porygon 2, we have Indeedee. And then instead of, like, I guess, what were other people doing? Jumpluff and something. You know, we have Sneasler Hatterene. So, I think this team is very aggressive. It can win very, very quickly, but you do have to remember your lines and know to play carefully. Like, out of the 7 matches that we played with this team, we got 4 wins and 3 losses, but out of those 3 losses, 2 losses came down to me just forgetting how to play the team correctly. Like, and then one of the losses came down to my opponent had a Rillaboom Rain team, which is like pretty much the perfect counter to the team. And I didn't play strongly enough into my Sneasler Charizard side of the team in order to beat it. However, we did see that the Sneasler Charizard side of the team actually did have a pretty good chance at countering it. So there is things to say, you know, like the team really does have the ability to be very aggressive, be very successful. You just have to remember when you're in some awkward matchups to like how you need to play it to make sure you're not going to lose. Like protecting Ursaluna if you need to, even if you're in Trick Room, just to make sure, like, you know, you have an extra turn where, you know, in the next turn you can take something out and Ursaluna doesn't have to go down before you get that chance, right? So, little things like that. But all in all, I do really like the team. And if there's anything that I'll say about it, it's that, like, I don't actually really like the physical Ursaluna that much in this format. Like, I think there's instances where I would have rather just used, what's it called? There's instances where I would have rather just used, like, the Blood Moon and just been able to do the big damage through that, right? So, it works, right? But, you know, there's always going to be those little optimizations that you think about, and even like the Torkoal set, you know, like we weren't getting the most out of the eject pack all the time, and there was actually some ways in which forgetting about the eject pack lost us a game, right? So like you do need to remember that type of stuff, but it is very useful. So if we do want to take a moment to just talk about some common leads, since I know I've been forgetting to do that, right? Indeedee Torkoal is a really good lead because your opponent can't necessarily avoid Torkoal. Like if they do, just to try to take out Indeedee, you're going to be doing very big damage. So you can do something like have Indeedee Torkoal lead with Hatterene Charizard in the back, and then by doing that, you know, if you need to, you can you know, stay with the fast stuff and still have Charizard pressure in the back, but you know, you can click Eruption, try to set Trick Room, and then if you do that successfully, you know, you get the eject pack out into Hatterene, you have Trick Room, and then immediately you're in Trick Room, Hatterene's out, things are going well, right? If they switch in Rillaboom, you have Torkoal and Vac to switch back in, and, you know, just kind of try to dunk on them, right? And so it really is that combination of like Torkoal Rillaboom that gives this team trouble, and you just need to evaluate how you can play versus their specific team comp. And a lot of the times Sneasler Charizard is going to be a good lead versus that, where, you know, you can have Torkoal in the back and Indeedee in the back, and then do what you see fit, where like if I need to, I switch in Indeedee. If they lead their Rain, you know, I can switch in Sun, right? And so, yeah, like Indeedee Torkoal, definitely a very strong lead on this team. Indeedee Charizard, very strong lead. Indeedee Sneasler, Sneasler Charizard, so that you like Sneasler or Charizard plus something, while knowing that you have the things in the back or next to it to activate it, right? Because what a team like this does really well is like you start two things that say, okay, like if I start Sneasler and Charizard with Indeedee and Torkoal in the back, if Sneasler's really good in the lead, I hard swap in Indeedee for Charizard. If Charizard's really good in the lead, I hard swap in Torkoal for Sneasler. In other instances, you might do Indeedee Charizard, right? And then say, okay, well, if I don't actually need the redirection right now, I'm going to hard swap Indeedee for Torkoal, and then, you know, have the Sun go for big damage. In other instances, you say, okay, well, Charizard's actually not really in a good position no matter what, so I'm going to hard swap in the Sun, go for Trick Room, and then I have Torkoal out right away, or I have Indeedee out right away, and now we're Trick Rooming, right? So there's a lot of really good things this team can do, and I'll move on now. I think we talked about it good enough. So the one thing is just the Citrus Berry over the Rocky Helmet, I think is kind of like here or there. So Where'd it go? Sorry. 7th team is our Weezing team. So I actually really like this team. It's just like, it's not perfect. Like, Weezing's not perfect. It's just not the best Pokemon. You know, like, it definitely does things. And, like, with the right team comp can do things. Like, this team comp helps it perform pretty well. But, like, Misty Surge Weezing isn't actually really the best way to run Weezing right now. And I think we all kind of know that. But, like, you know, this is a viable way to run Misty or Weezing. Like, Amoonguss is still a huge threat. Things that, you know, obviously Dire Claw is a huge threat. So, like, having the Misty Surge is really nice. And, you know, shout outs to the homie for suggesting it, because sometimes, you know, you want people to suggest things. I appreciate when people do, you know. So, when he suggested Weezing, we kind of just worked towards a Trick Room team, you know, that just like most Trick Room teams has ways to, you know, say, if you want to stop Trick Room, I still have fast things that are a problem, right? So, like, even if you can't get off Trick Room, Dragapult, Rillaboom, Incin, P2 is a very scary out of Trick Room for no matter what. Weezing with the specs and having Misty Surge, even if you don't get Trick Room, can still put on a lot of pressure that your opponent needs to be able to respect, right? There's some instances where, like, versus Goldengo, the Weezing would be nice to have Fire Terra instead of Dark Terra, but then you're not really as good versus Ground, right? And Ground, I mean, isn't really like that big of a problem for this team, but like, it is nice to have the ability to tear out of it. So I don't know, it's something that I guess you could say, like, I'm still thinking about, quote unquote, but I like this, you know. And so if there's anything that I would change, it's definitely just that, like, just the Fire Terra. But I like this because it especially helps versus Psyspam teams too. So, you know, you can have 2 dark types with the Weezing and Incineroar on the field, and then you also have Rillaboom to turn off the Psychic Drain. So there's a lot of really nice things that you can do with those combination of things. So, yeah, I don't really know what else I want to say. I know that I have a tendency to ramble, but I think the teams are relatively straightforward for someone who plays VGC enough, right? Like, and because we have so many teams to get through, like, we're kind of trying to get through, right? So this is the 7th team. It's the Trick Room team. It's a Trick Room team, more specifically. But I actually really like the way it looks. So Porygon very strong right now. And when you see it in action, you know, you remember why. Especially with Rillaboom, like, the passive healing on top of everything else is super beneficial for Porygon. And I know a lot of people are opting for Terra Blast, but, like, in my opinion, anytime I've gone up against this Porygon set that I'm using, it's so good. Like, the amount of things, like, that you can cover for type-wise with Thunderbolt and Ice Beam is like, okay, so we've got Dragonite covered, Rillaboom covered, Pelipper covered, Basculegion covered, like, Ground covered, you know, I don't know. So you guys get it. We got Flying covered. Like, we've got so many important things that we can hit for super effective with Ice and Electric that, like, while the Terra Blast would be nice for the stab right away for, like, extra damage, I find it really not needed. And if I don't have Thunderbolt and Ice Beam, I end up in instances versus things like Pelipper, versus things like Dragonite, where I'm like, wow, like, if I had that, that would have been really nice, wouldn't it? Like, so, because of Porygon bulk, I do think that this is very affordable and very efficient. So, effective, whatever you want to call it. 8th team is very similar to this team. It's actually the team that that inspired this team. So this is the team that inspired the Weezing team. It is a version with Primarina and Volcarona instead of Weezing and Incineroar. And shoutouts to the homies for suggesting that we try a support Volcarona instead of a Quiver Dance one, because we really just weren't getting that good use out of the Giga Drain Quiver Dance Heat Wave set. Like, I actually think that because Fiery Dance can reliably Oko Boldango and Struggle Bug is a really good support move, like, this Volcarona works really well. Not to mention that we have Trick Room, so technically you don't always want to be faster than you were. So, like, you know, you still have Dragapult to be scary, but you also have Rage Powder, Flame Body, you have Struggle Bug, Fiery Dance to, you know, raise special attack if needed, and all that works, right? We do forego Haze on Primarina. I just have found that I really like having Dazzling Gleam just in case. However, I do recognize that dropping Haze for Dazzling Gleam can be bad sometimes. Versus Dondozo, you do have Ursaluna, you do have Rillaboom, you do have P2, you do have the Flame Body Volcarona. So you do have ways to handle Dondozo pretty efficiently, but like, you do need to be careful. One thing I will say is that if they can't Terra, Thunderbolt plus Woodhammer is a reliable quote-unquote two-shot, right? What I mean by that is it takes 2 turns reliably to KO Dondozo if they can't Terra. Because you Thunderbolt Woodhammer, take them down decently under half, and then they can't protect leftovers out of it. So, like, the Thunderbolt Woodhammer is always a way to get Dondozo off the field if they can't Terra around it. And if they can Terra around it, you can usually take advantage of that with the other tools of the team. So, really good stuff. I like the way the team feels. I know we're not doing as good of a job talking again about, like, the switch outs, but, like, you know, Rillaboom's bad against fire types. What can eat fire hits? Dragapult, Primarina, you know, things like that. So, the teams, you know, they do have their switch outs, right? Fighting moves good against Ursaluna, Porygon, not good against Dragapult, not good against Volcarona, right? Electric moves, not good against Ursaluna, good against Primarina, right? So we have those little switch outs that make the team good, and a high level player knows that you got to remember to do switch outs sometimes. So, 9th team, I was very proud of this team. This is my long neck boy team. So yeah. What was I trying to say? I just wanted to try Axeggutor. Like, I had been fumbling around with Torkoal for a little while. You know, Torkoal's really strong, and Trick Room's really strong. And I was like, alright, like, what about Harvest, though? Like, Harvest is actually really strong. And, like, so I was originally testing a Harvest Leech Seed set, and I just felt like this format is honestly too volatile, especially without the right supports. Like, if I had Comfy, maybe. If I had Screens, maybe. Right? But then the team would be trying to do too much. So, like, I felt like dropping the Leech Seed for an offensive Axeggutor was a really good choice. Originally, we were trying Life Orb with all this stuff, and it worked well, but just not really, you know, like, it's Harvest, right? So you do Harvest Citrus Berry, you get the stuff back, you live forever, and if anything, excuse me, if anything, I might consider dropping Dragon Pulse for Draco Meteor, because, like, there are instances where, like, just having that extra damage does matter a lot, and Axeggutor does hit really hard, so, like, something to think about. But in general, having the Dragon Pulse has been nice because it does hit incredibly hard still, and it allows Axeggutor to just sit on the field. Like, because if you have the Citrus Berry Harvest, like, sitting on the field is really good. And so if you're, like, not having to just switch out all the time, because you click Draco Meteor. It's really nice. It's just that sometimes you end up actually not having the damage you need, and you just need to be aware of if there's gonna be an instance where you're like, oh, like, is Dragon Pulse enough? Like, but talking about the rest of the team, I really like Assault Vest King Gambit actually in this format, like, but I know that Swords Dance is really good. Like, the Swords Dance version is always good. So we have a Swords Dance version, but I really wanted to try the Assault Vest one, and specifically we're doing Fire Terra Assault Vest because we don't like Will-O-Wisp. However, it's a little bit less good versus like Primarina versus things like that, and this team's biggest weakness is actually Primarina. So that is something to say, but we do have Wide Guard, we do have Sun. It's just that, like, you know, Torkoal still takes a lot of damage from the Hyper Voice even in the Sun, because it's basically like taking a non-super effective Hyper Voice. Like, it still does crazy damage and needs to be respected. The last thing I'll say before we move on to the last team is I chose Life Orb on this team over Band, just because, like, not having to lock into a move is really nice, and if you're not using the Life Orb already, it's kind of like, why not, right? Like, it's you're still getting the extra damage that you really need on Dragapult. It's just that, like, it's another instance where you need to be aware that, like, okay, I'm not hitting as hard as I might expect, so being cautious of the possibility that you're gonna leave them at a little bit, and what you need to do if that does happen, right? So kind of the same thing about with Draco Meteor, but I think that being able to switch is really important. So common leads really quick we'll talk about. I actually really like Hariyama Porygon, Porygon Dragapult, Hariyama Exeggutor has been a very strong lead, Torkoal Exeggutor, Porygon 2 Exeggutor, Dragapult Exeggutor, so things like that, right? Like, it's actually really nice that Exeggutor has Trick Room. So, it's the fact that Exeggutor is a grass dragon type that has Trick Room was one of the biggest things that made me want to try this. Because it's just like you could just not even run Porygon, and you would have a Trick Room team still, right? Like, that's what's crazy about it. You could take Porygon off for, like, Ursaluna, and this would still work. But Porygon's just so good. Like, Recover, all that stuff. Like, the amount of things that it can hit with Ice Beam, Thunderbolt. So, like, you guys get it. But going on to our last team, it is the Roundworm. So, I actually really like this team. It's not perfect. Like, originally we were trying or Sinistra over Amoonguss, but I just felt like we didn't really need Trick Room that bad in a lot of instances. Like, we won quite a bit of matches because we had Trick Room, but, like, it felt like it was eating up the way that I was using the team, and then Sinistra was ending up not doing as much as we needed it to. It just was that, like, yes, having the Machagacha is kind of good. Yes, having the Strength Sap's kind of good. Like, yes, having the switch in healing is good. But besides that, like, Amoonguss can do half that stuff and better with Spore, with Rage Powder. Technically, what's his name also gets Rage Powder and just gets Trick Room, right? So you're basically trading off Pollen Puff for Hospitality, Spore for Machagacha, Rage Powder you still have, and then Clear Smog for Trick Room, and then just saying, like, can I get away with not running Trick Room, right? Life Orb Overquill, we took off Self-Destruct for Protect. I felt like it was pretty important. And then, you know, now we have Water Terra instead of normal Terra. So it's like a less cheesy team now, and I think that complements it. Like, the Self-Destruct was cool and all, but, like, I found myself very comfortably able to play the team without self-destruct. It was just fun. Like, that's all. So, talking about the team a bit more, you know, it is pretty much a standard Rain team. Like, Overquill, Pelipper, very strong lead. Pelipper, Amoonguss, very strong lead. Pelipper, Garchomp, with Orthworm in the back, and Archaludon, right, or Overquill. So I really like the synergy that this team has combined with the switch outs that this team has, right? Because, like, Amoonguss being resisting to fighting makes it a really good switch out for Orthworm, Archaludon, you know, technically Overquill, kind of. Sinistcha was also really good for that too, right? Because we could just click Rage Powder and then take close combats with literally nothing happening. But Amoonguss is a little bit better because it does guarantee break the sash. And then, you know, you're breaking sash and then just taking a little bit of damage from close combat or Dire Claw or something, right? So, I like it. And I don't really know what more I want to say about the team. Like, I'm kind of just starting this space. So, like, you know, it's a lot to talk about all at once. The teams all work. You guys get that. Like, we could probably be trying Protect on at least one of our Amoongusses. I'll admit that. We could probably be trying Protect on at least one of our Pelipers. I admit that. But the format in general has definitely been centralizing onto Weather Wars, Terrain Wars, and then just these really strong dragons and other things that are good in weather or terrain or whatever. So, it's been fun. It has been a really fun format. I hope you guys enjoy the teams. And let me know which one you like the most. Let me know if you try them, how you like them. And thank you guys for tuning in. So, you know, I appreciate y'all, and I hope you appreciate it. So have a good one.